Coming up on The World Today. Journalists Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov win Nobel Peace Prize. Deadly attack hits Afghanistan mosque during Friday prayers, killing at least 50 people. Plus, Taiwanese president says the country does not seek military confrontation with China. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Journalists Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov have won the Nobel Peace Prize for their fights to defend freedom of expression in the Philippines and Russia. The Nobel Committee called the pair representatives of all journalists who stand up for this ideal. The editors are known for hard-hitting investigations that have angered their country's rulers, and both have faced significant threats. They were chosen out of 329 candidates.
Two journalists whose work has angered authorities in Russia and the Philippines are now the winners of the Nobel Peace Prize. That was the announcement by the Nobel Committee in Norway. Maria Ressa is the co-founder of Rappler, a digital media company which has launched investigations into the controversial and large-scale killings during the Philippines' war on drugs. The award-winning journalist was convicted last year of libel in a case seen as a test of the country's press freedom.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2021 to Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov for their efforts to safeguard freedom of expression, which is a precondition for democracy and lasting peace. Ms. Ressa and Mr. Muratov are receiving the Peace Prize for their courageous fight for freedom of expression in the Philippines and in Russia. At the same time, they are representatives of all journalists who stand up for this ideal in a world in which democracy and freedom of the press face increasingly adverse conditions.
Dmitry Muratov is the editor-in-chief of Russia's investigative newspaper Novaya Gazeta, which has defied the Kremlin with its corruption reporting and extensive coverage of the conflict in Ukraine. Muratov says he will use his win to help independent journalists who face growing pressure from authorities. The Kremlin has congratulated Muratov on the win, despite his paper's criticism of President Putin and the Russian government. The prize is the first for journalists since German Karl von Ossetsky won it in 1935 for revealing his country's secret post-war rearmament program. Reacting to the news, Ressa said she was in shock, and the win shows that nothing is possible without facts.
I guess what this just shows is that that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee realized that a world without facts means a world without truth and trust. And if you don't have any of those things, you certainly can't conquer coronavirus. You can't conquer climate change. I've been saying this over and over, and it feels a little bit like, Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill. And when you get attacked in the process of trying to roll the rock up the hill, you just kind of dodge, you keep going. And it's a shock. But the fact that a journalist from the Philippines and a journalist from Russia won the Nobel Peace Prize tells you about the state of the world today and the state of the Philippines.
Last year's prize went to the World Food Programme for its efforts to combat hunger and food insecurity around the globe. The award is accompanied by a gold medal and over $1.1 million prize money. The award is accompanied by a gold medal and over $1.1 million. The prize money comes from a bequest left by the prize's creator, Swedish inventor Alfred Nobel, who died in 1896.
Well, congratulations have been pouring in for the Nobel Peace Prize winners. In his congratulatory message, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged a global effort to protect press freedom.
I congratulate Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov on being awarded the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. Throughout the world, a free press is essential for peace, justice, sustainable development, and human rights, and the cornerstone for building fair and impartial institutions. No society can be free and fair without journalists who are able to investigate wrongdoing, bring information to citizens, hold leaders accountable, and speak truth to power. Yet, anti-media rhetoric and attacks against media workers continue to rise. We are seeing growing violence and harassment against journalists in person and online, and women journalists are often subjected to particular abuse. At the same time, while technology has transformed the ways in which we receive and share information, it is also used to mislead public opinion or to fuel violence and hatred. Falsehoods trump facts, and this cannot become the new normal. Free and independent journalism is our greatest ally in combating misinformation and disinformation. As we congratulate the award winners, let us reaffirm the right to press freedom, recognize the fundamental role of journalists, and reinforce efforts at every level to support a free, independent, and diverse media.
Yes, Mom. And media rights group Reporters Without Borders has also celebrated the announcement, expressing joy and urgency in reaction to the news. The group, known as RSF, has worked with both journalists to defend journalism in their countries.
Joy and urgency. We have two feelings. Joy, because this is an extraordinary tribute to journalism, an excellent tribute to all those journalists who take risks everywhere around the world to just defend the right of information to everybody. This is an excellent tribute to two very important journalists, two incredible figures, Maria and Dimitri. And also urgency, which is another feeling, because this will be a decisive decade for journalism. Journalism is in danger, journalism is weakened, journalism is threatened by many threats all over the world. This is a call for mobilization to defend journalism.
Now to less cheery news in Afghanistan. A suicide attack on a mosque in the Afghan city of Kunduz has killed at least 50 people. It's the deadliest assault since U.S. forces left the country. Graphic video shows bodies scattered inside the Saeedabad mosque used by the minority Shia Muslim community. More than 100 people were injured in the blast in the northern city. No group has said it was behind the attack, but ISK, the Afghan regional affiliate of the Islamic State group that is violently opposed to the governing Taliban, has carried out several attacks recently, largely in the east of the country. Security analyst Chidi Nwanu joins us now for more on this. Chidi, this attack bears all the hallmarks of ISK, the group that targeted Kabul airport in August. There's also been reports of other attacks around the country. There's no doubt that ISIS represents a significant threat to the Taliban's promise of improved security, right?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. The attack does bear the hallmarks of an ISIS-K attack. It follows many of their MOs, their method of operations. So it's an attack on the Shia minority, on the Hazaras. It's an attack, in an area that's Tajik dominated, near the Tajikistan border. And it seems it's a suicide attack, in a mosque, in a Shia mosque, which all of the kind of things which Salafist jihadis are known for. So we could, from this, extrapolate that it is most likely an ISIS-K attack.
But the Taliban say they've arrested dozens of ISIS members, but they've also publicly played down the threat ISIS poses. Do you think they'll be able to keep the militant group at bay?
The Taliban's, claims of being able to suppress the ISIS-K insurgency or ISIS-K terrorist attacks is par for the course. It's the same problems that every government or every dominant power has, in that trying to fight an insurgent is much more difficult than it is to be an insurgent, especially when the insurgency is in the ascendancy. So the Taliban is essentially suffering the same fates that it's inflicted upon the Afghan government and the allied forces whilst they're in Afghanistan, being attacked by much lighter, much more mobile forces that don't need to be everywhere at the same time. They just need to launch attacks at their own time and their own choosing, and, benefit from the carnage and the publicity. So whilst the Taliban might say that they've rounded up dozens of ISIS-K members, they've, crushed them in different places, ISIS-K is not holding territory anymore. They are, again, in the insurgency or in the guerrilla warfare stage of their insurgency. They don't need to hold territory because they're not strong enough. They can continue weakening the Taliban and attacking the Afghan civil population through these attacks.
There's also the question of global security. How likely or successful would you say the Taliban is in keeping its promise not to let any attacks on the US and other Western countries emanate from Afghanistan?
The Taliban promise not to allow their territory to be used for terrorist attacks is something that's more or less dependent upon their ability to control every inch of their territory. This is something that no Afghan government has been able to do for a while. So it's important to note that that the Taliban promises not to allow their territory, as in anybody who's allied with them or any entity whom they have control or influence over, but they don't have control over ISIS-K or any other group. It could be the Uyghurs, the Uzbeks, or the Baluchistanis who might want to use their territory for attacks. So there is a large amount of kind of flexibility that the international community has to take with this. It will be a little bit trite to expect the Taliban to prevent any attacks on international territory, and that could be including attacks on China, Pakistan, Iran, or as well as the West. But the key thing is that it is very much in the Taliban's interest not to allow these attacks, because they saw what happened to them last time, and they do not want to suffer that fate again.
All right, then, security analyst Chidinwanu, thank you so much for your thoughts on the program. Now, some updates from the COVID-19 pandemic. Australia's Victoria state has reported a record number of COVID-19 cases, plus Malaysia has approved the BioNTech Pfizer booster shot. Here's the latest from around the world. Australia's Victoria state has seen a record 1,838 new cases, the highest number of any state in the country since the pandemic began, exceeding the previous high of 1,763 set 3 days earlier. There were also 5 new deaths over the past 24 hours. Health experts have warned that the state's peak is still to come. However, the state is still on track to reach the vaccination targets needed in order to lift restrictions. Meanwhile, still in Australia, tents have been set up outside many Melbourne hospitals, and the Australian Defence Force has been called in to assist paramedics as the hospital system comes under strain from the worsening outbreak. Russia has reported 936 coronavirus-related deaths, the largest single-day death toll it has recorded since the pandemic began. The government's coronavirus task force also says it has recorded 27,246 new cases in the last 24 hours, a slight decrease from 27,550 cases a day earlier. In a conditional approval, Malaysia has given the green light to the use of the BioNTech Pfizer coronavirus vaccine's booster shot. The country says the jab will be used only for adults aged 18 and above at least 6 months after they've received their second dose.
To welcome President Joe Biden.
And finally, US President Joe Biden has advocated for COVID-19 vaccine mandates to force roughly 67 million unvaccinated Americans to get the jab.
The fact is, this has been a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units. The unvaccinated patients are leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or in need of a cancer operation, and so much more because they can't get into the ICU, they can't get into the operating rooms. The unvaccinated also put our economy at risk because people are reluctant to go out. And think about this.
Biden last month ordered all federal workers and contractors to be vaccinated, with few exceptions, and for private employers with 100 or more workers to require employees to be vaccinated or get tested for the coronavirus weekly. Still to come on the program. Robots police the streets of Singapore for bad social behavior. More details in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. U.S. officials say a nuclear submarine hit an unknown object while submerged in waters in the Asia-Pacific region, injuring a number of sailors. It's not clear what caused the incident on Saturday, but the submarine remained fully operational. Officials say the collision happened in international waters in the South China Sea and that 11 sailors had been injured. The incident happened amid rising tensions in the region. And Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen says the country does not seek military confrontation, but will do whatever it takes to defend its freedom. The statement comes amid rising tensions with China that sparked alarm around the world. Taiwan, claimed by China as its own territory, reported close to 150 Chinese Air Force aircraft flew into its air defense zone over a 4-day period beginning last Friday, though those missions have since ended. Former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, speaking at the same forum, condemned China for its aggressive actions.
Taiwan is fully committed to collaborating with regional players to prevent armed conflicts in the East China, South China Seas, and in the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan does not seek military confrontation. It hopes for a peaceful, stable, predictable, and mutually beneficial coexistence with its neighbors. But Taiwan will also do whatever it takes to defend its freedom and democratic way of life.
As its growing belligerence towards Taiwan shows, sensing that its relative power might have peaked with its population ageing, its economy slowing, and its finances creaking, it is quite possible that Beijing could lash out disastrously quite soon. Our challenge is to try to ensure that the unthinkable remains unlikely and that the possible does not become the probable.
Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry has told the U.S. to cease all military ties with Taiwan after reports surfaced that U.S. Special Operation Forces have been training Taiwanese forces in the country. Small numbers of U.S. Special Operations Forces have been rotating into Taiwan on a temporary basis to carry out training of Taiwanese forces. The Pentagon, which historically has not disclosed details about U.S. training or advising of Taiwanese forces, did not specifically comment on or confirm the deployment. Our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, joins us now for more. Maria, what more can you tell us about these reports that U.S. Special Forces have been carrying out training of Taiwanese forces?
Yes, well, the U.S. military is going to be obviously very closed about what exactly they're doing, but they are not denying the fact, and they're furthermore stating that they have been assisting Taiwan since prior to the Biden administration. So we know that there's a small group there. They're not exactly providing insight into the exact training that's happening, but we do know that they are preparing and they are assisting Taiwan and ensuring that they are prepared for if there is any conflict that should occur between mainland China and Taiwan. And so obviously the Chinese government is not very happy with this, and this just further escalates the conflict and the potential conflict that could occur in the region, and obviously the tension that has existed in the U.S.
Well, you know, as you mentioned, the situation with China and Taiwan has once again raised global alarm. Apart from that telephone conversation between the U.S. and Chinese president earlier this week, what more is the U.S. doing to ensure peace in the region?
The U.S. is seeing this as a human rights piece. The U.S. sees this as, the Taiwanese island potentially being at risk of a takeover, and the U.S. is standing with them to support them through that process. We know that the Chinese government has asked that the U.S. no longer provide weaponry to Taiwan, but we know that has not ended, and it's very clear that the U.S. is taking this as a human rights mission. And is looking at this as a way to protect the people from what has been obviously looked at globally as potentially putting the island at risk and the people at risk from potential invasion.
All right, then, Maria Bird, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.
Thank you for having me.
And let's now meet Xavier, the robot who is patrolling the streets of Singapore on police duty, ready to issue out warnings or advisories for those who behave in an uncivil manner. Developed by Singapore's Home Team Science and Technology Agency, the robot with 7 eyes or cameras rolls along on 4 wheels. Or 2 of the autonomous robots went on patrol in September, monitoring a busy shopping and residential area for bad behavior. Messages like "do not ride on parked motorcycles on parts" flash across the screen of Xavier when it detects someone breaking the rules. The robots were designed to also be on the lookout for illegal smoking and gatherings which exceed the current COVID-19 group size limits. Singapore authorities had said that during the trial, the robots would be used for surveillance and displaying messages to educate the public on proper behavior and would not be used for law enforcement. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that works here in Nigeria. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shobowale.